Sacrifice. What's up, folks? Justin Garcia here, a.k.a. Master Chim, and I am here with the White Sacrifice, Patrick Kelly, White Boy Pat.
What's up?
And welcome to another episode of The Pressure Project. ThePressureProject.com is our website. Info at ThePressureProject.com is our contact email. ThePressureProjectMembers.com is our membership site. Check that out. A lot of stuff on the membership site. Officially well over 200 episodes.
Yeah.
Archived.
Awesome.
We have the Loyalty Matrix Decoded.
Yeah.
We have the Warrior Continuum. We have part 2 to episode 200.
Yeah.
Which is receiving a hell of a lot of positive feedback, as I knew it would.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So if you have not checked out a membership, you should probably do so.
It's worth it just for that episode.
It is. Like, people don't understand.
And some people have been joining because of that episode.
Right. And have said that after the fact.
Yeah.
All right. So a little disclaimer. I got a little stuffy nose issue today.
Okay.
So if I sound like
Sounds fine.
stuffy nosy, then that's what that is. Yeah. All right. So today we're going to talk about something pretty important.
Yeah.
And this is probably the first non-interview episode we've done since I came back from the MPI conference.
That is correct.
So this is inspired by that conference, inspired by a couple of different aspects, of that conference, and something that I was actually discussing at the conference.
Yeah.
I was discussing it with a couple of the people who were attending. I think Henrik and Lana from Red Ice, and I were discussing this at one point. And the idea is sacrifice. Now, sacrifice, the definition of it, and this isn't mine, it's what I found online, is to give up something valued for advantage.
Yeah.
All right. So to give up something valued for advantage, that means whatever you give up needs to have some sort of value, inherent value to you specifically. But you're only doing so to create an advantage in effect. So the absolute value of the transition, right, or of the exchange is a positive one for you.
Yeah.
If you're giving up 3, you're getting back 4. If you're giving up 10, you're getting back 20, so on and so forth. So sacrifice isn't just you putting yourself through any sort of negative experience. It's not you, just, doing damage or throwing something out, or
that's masochism.
Right. A little bit of a different thing.
A little different.
So the thing about sacrifice is it's almost an investment.
It is, yeah.
Right? An investment.
Yeah, 100%.
Of elimination, right?
Correct.
So the reason I brought this up is, or the reason this is fresh on my mind as of late, is because there was a point in the MPI conference which I had a great time. I've said that, plenty of times till now.
I was unable to go, but I was there in white spirit.
You were there in white spirit. I had white socks on, so for you.
Yeah.
So the conference had this one guy who was there. I brought him up on a live stream. Mm-hmm. The guy, what was his name? Jenkins or something? Somebody said his name.
No, I don't know.
Do you remember? Lamont, Leroy
Jenkins,
Tyrone.
Leroy Jenkins is
Tyrone Biggums. No, it was a gentleman that I'm obviously screwing up his name.
John?
Didn't you know?
Oh, I thought it wasn't someone that you said, "Hey,
yeah,
I don't know his name."
Just let that go. So,
but Leroy Jenkins is like,
walk away.
That's like an actual meme. Like that's a guy that they.
Well, it's not him.
No, it's not him.
It's a guy who goes to these conferences.
Yeah,
it's a black guy that goes to these conferences and sort of documents who he sees.
Okay,
pays attention to name tags and everything, and then goes and tries to sabotage these people's lives.
Oh yeah,
by going to their employers, and he's costed people their jobs, their livelihood, and so forth. And the thing is, to me, he was just some fat black guy sitting in the lobby.
Sure.
So right off the bat, this guy and a couple of people at the conference explained to me who he was, because I was like, the anomaly is,
sure,
who's this fat black guy sitting on a couch outside?
Yeah.
And they explained that's who he was. And I asked, I was like, well, why is he even allowed in the building? It's a private building. It's a, it's a rented, conference,
Of course.
hall. I didn't understand, and nor did they. It was like one of these. I guess this guy gets away with this because he threatens lawsuits with everybody or
Sure.
cries racism, whatever the case is. But getting to the point where sacrifice became a thing, I was asking, so what's the big deal of having him here?
Yeah, he found me.
Like, fuck that guy,
Yeah.
And one of the guys said, well, a lot of people don't come because they know he's going to be here. And I didn't understand what that meant. Yeah. Obviously, I was being naive. I mean,
sure, I get
it. Is the guy a threat? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And then it was explained to me that this is what he does. And my whole thing is, well, if we're here talking about, pride and
yes.
European culture, European identity, and we're meeting to sort of validate our right to do so, and in the process also looking to establish a consensus that those of this mindset are not out to to burn crosses, to hang people from trees, to do all the things that everybody seems to use the fear mongering to say that we're going to do. I thought these types of events were geared towards, taking steps in the right direction where that was concerned.
Yeah. Positive.
And the gentleman I was talking to said, well, you got to understand not everybody is self-employed like you are. Not everybody, is in a position where, they could.
Not everybody's a boss.
Right. Not everybody. And
Hefe.
And he had a point,
I guess so.
And it's true. You guess so. It's a valid point.
It's a valid point.
Even if you don't agree with the point, you still have to concede it's a point.
100%.
So you can't say, I guess it's a point. It's a point that you don't agree with.
Yes, that is correct.
So the thing is, I don't agree with the point
I
either.
know.
But the thing is, it is a valid point, So it got me to thinking, and my this was earlier on in the day. So as the day goes on, this is like on my mind, and I'm going, there was probably close to 200 people at the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, it's like, if there's 200 people here, more than I expected, actually. And I didn't know what to expect. I just,
sure.
I thought it was going to be like a smaller, more intimate meeting.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised to see all these people. But I'm thinking, if there are people who are staying home because of this guy's presence, imagine how many people would have been here.
True. Yeah.
And imagine how many people would have experienced the conference had they been here. Yeah. And how many more people we would have been able to send back into society, with the value of this conference, in their pocket.
Yeah.
Figuratively speaking. So the whole thing is, I was wondering, well, if they're not here, and they have these jobs that, they'll lose if they show that they are here.
Yeah.
It's either, this is something that I didn't think it was.
Yeah.
And that, maybe it was, or, the options would be, it would have to be some racist, Klan rally type of meeting, which it wasn't. Or these individual people who would not have come because of the presence of that guy and those like him, these people are in situations where there's a lack of congruence between their belief system, their identity, and their lives. Yeah. And who the people around them see them as.
Correct.
So
it was weird. I saw the video, people coming out wearing masks.
Right.
And I didn't expect that.
Right. I didn't understand why that was necessary.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all.
So,
and it kind of, I don't know, it's not the best form. It's not the best protocol, I think.
I don't make decisions for anybody, right?
True.
So I had to somehow reconcile this in my mind. Right?
Yeah.
So that's where this episode came in.
Yeah.
So I've come up with the sacrifice protocol.
Awesome.
Because I need a list.
Yeah, lists are good.
I need a list. I need to put stuff down. I need to organize it, and I need a way to deal with these things.
Yes.
Right. So, and a way to share. So what I'm going to share today is my 4-step sacrifice protocol.
Awesome.
And I would say that everybody in any sort of realm of belief system, right? And anybody who is a part of anything where they would see themselves as generally needing sacrifice as a component to their participation, this is going to apply to you. Specifically, this was inspired by those people who did not show up to the conference because they were intimidated by the presence of this fat black guy on the couch.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not limited to those people. Number one, discover your limits. So when I say discover your limits, I'm talking about what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? My limits are pretty extreme in a lot of different areas. Will I lose my job, my business, my home, my car, my dog, whatever, in order to be who I am, do what I do. Well, I've shown time and time again, I am committed beyond that point.
Yeah.
I have lost business because of the podcast, because of me, sharing my views on Facebook and through the podcast and on other podcasts, because I believe so passionately and in what I'm doing that, I'm really not bound by any addiction, or reliance on anything materialistic. When you get into, discovering your limits, well, I have my limits. There certainly are limits. And, whatever those things are, because they needn't be made public. But whatever those limits are, they're very well explored and defined. I understand where there's a line that I have to stop at. I understand that I may be in a situation right now that is going to control, my actions.
Yeah.
That should the situation change, would not be the case. But as it stands now, it is. So number one is discover your limits, because you want to find out where you are.
Yeah.
You want to find out what can you do, what can't you do. If you just won, or let's just say you have $10 on you.
Yeah, $10.
And somebody wants to sell you a $10, ice cream cone.
Okay.
You wouldn't mind having ice cream at the moment, but they're asking for everything you got.
Yeah.
And you say, you know what? I cannot take these this last $10 and give it to you because it exceeds the limit of what I'm willing to do, for that ice cream cone.
Yeah.
But if you had $1 million in the bank, $10 ice cream for everybody. I'm buying ice cream for everybody.
Or you wouldn't, because a lot of rich people, that's why they're rich. They're not spending $10 on an ice cream cone.
Certain types of rich people.
A good example of that too, discover your limits. I was talking to a friend of ours, and they were saying that they can't afford to have their wife not work. Mm-hmm. We can't afford it. And it was like, who can? Like, that's something that's a limit. I'm willing to make a sacrifice for that.
Right. So that is going to transition into the next one.
Awesome.
Number 2. This fucking guy over here. So, I'm going to explain all these things.
I never left
before the episode, so that you understand what they mean.
But this is the magic. Some people thought I left. I got messages. No, I got messages saying like, "Come back. Where'd you go?" And I was like, "I never left."
You think I'm going to get rid of him? Look at this fucking. This one of a fucking kind.
It's true.
Robot motherfucker. Anyway.
Yeah.
So number 1 is discover your limits. Number 2, design transitions. Okay. So now let's take the example of what you said.
Okay.
Your friend, I can't afford to not have my wife work. Well, how could you get to the point where you could afford to not have your wife work? Because not having your wife work just for the sake of not having your wife work really has no value. Yeah. Obviously, the applications of that is, as is the case with our ladies, they stay home, they watch the kids, they
run the house.
They run the house. They facilitate much of the homeschooling.
Yep.
There are things that they're able to do because they do not have to work. So when I say design transitions, put yourself in a situation where you could expand your limits.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever limits you're bound by now, you can expand them elsewhere. So another thing too, to go back to discover your limits, it's really creating a level of priority. Some people say, well, I have to work because I have bills to pay. And you say, well, what are your bills? And one of them may be a $200 cable bill.
Yeah.
And, when actually going through this process of discovering your limits and you see, this $200 cable bill, it's like, well, can you do without cable? Can you do without cable and in turn this $200 cable bill? How would your life change? Would it be a positive, a negative? Like, what would be the effect of getting rid of cable? And they, if they come to the conclusion, if they have a fucking brain, that their life would probably improve if they got rid of cable. Well, now that's $200 worth of work that they have to do less of, right? So they have that wiggle room now. So we understand, because remember the whole topic of this is sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yeah.
So, maybe the things that you're doing to earn those $200 right off the bat can be eliminated because you realize that you could sacrifice that cable, right?
To gain
the advantage, through the time and effort and energy of having to work to earn that money, right?
True.
So there's certainly a relationship between discovering your limits and in turn designing the transition, because the transition would be, I don't need the cable. So I'm working this extra. I don't need this extra $200 worth of work. So you get paid, $10 an hour, let's just say.
Sure.
That's 20 hours of work right there.
Yeah.
20 hours of work that could either be, taken off and spent on other things, or maybe the money itself could be, directed towards other things.
True. Yeah.
Maybe it's your wife that's working 20 hours a week to pay for the cable bill. And maybe now you realize you don't need the cable. Boom. Now she's home.
Yeah. 100%. So exactly.
The next step after discovering the limits is designing the transitions, because this is now what you're going to do to extend your limits, right? To extend your limits.
Correct.
In going with that same, hypothetical, the limit then will not be bound by, I have to make that $200.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
You've managed to extend your limits. That 20 hours of work is no longer a necessity, right?
Yeah, so pretty good example.
So it's called a save in baseball. Anyway, design
best closer ever.
So number three, commit to your limits. So this is now how big your sack is.
Yeah.
This is now, what are you really about? Mm-hmm. Are you, as they say, about that life?
Yeah, are you about that life?
Are you about that life? So, getting back to the seminar, right? Let's speak specifically now. What motivated me to talk about this stuff? You have these people that didn't come to the conference,
yes,
because they were maybe worried about losing their jobs. I'm not going to tell them, well, come anyway. Because that might exceed their limits.
It might exceed their limits.
Maybe they have a family and a mortgage and everything, and they're in a job that covers, the livelihood of all the things that are necessary for that family to survive.
Correct.
I'm not going to tell you, listen, come anyway and sacrifice all those different things, your obligations and responsibilities as a man in the process.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not going to say that because it exceeds their limits.
Correct.
But I am going to ask, well, when you're designing your transition, how do you change your life so that you can come to these conferences?
Yeah.
Do you have a job that is paying for a lifestyle that you could do a lot less with in order to gain more freedom to be who you are?
Yeah.
Right? So if it's the and we hear these stories all the time, and they're these feel good stories usually when we hear about them. I used to work in the rat race of the stock market, or I was in corporate America, but then I gave it all up and I opened a little boutique, and a bed and breakfast, up in the countryside, and I've never been happier. And this is what it's all about. What I'm speaking is a much more general, concept and protocol, of which that happens to be an application.
100%.
Right. So when you have the guy who can't come to the conference because if he loses his job, his life is in shambles. Number one, is it really in shambles? May not be. Maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. So address that first and foremost, because if it isn't going to be in shambles, well, now you know that it isn't, and that no longer has any power over you. If it is, if it would be, then you have to tell yourself, remind yourself, your lifestyle is designed in a manner that you cannot even proclaim your identity.
Correct. Yeah.
You have to be prideful in private.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Right? It's a completely, hypocritical position to have. I am proud in private.
Yeah, it's
you can't
oxymoron.
Do that, right? So if you do have that lifestyle that requires you maintaining that job, and because of that, you cannot proclaim your identity. You cannot be who you are, right? Ironically, the conference was themed "Become Who You Are."
Yeah.
If you cannot, and this is part of the motivation for this talk, are you becoming who you are? Are you getting a different job? Are you finding a way to adjust your lifestyle so that a different job would not affect you should the need arise? The big hurdle, I think, with a lot of people is, and this isn't just in the European nationalism type movements. It's not limited to them, this group. It's really more universal to that than that. People are unwilling to do without, their new car, their computers, their
internets,
their internet, their coffee in the morning, their fancy clothing, their vacation once a year,
jewelry,
their jewelry, their all of the things that are by and large completely meaningless, right?
Yeah.
But they've become so addicted to them that they don't want to do without it. And in which case I would say, well, and if that's the case, then don't proclaim yourself to be part of a movement that you're not even willing to sacrifice for.
Correct.
Right? So discover your limits, design transitions. Number 3, commit to your limits. What are your limits? Now you have a job that if you lose, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You've managed to change your life, design your life in a way that if you were to lose this job and had to get another one, it would require a little bit of a transition on your part, but you'd be all right. Well, now you have to commit.
Yeah.
Now you have to show up to the conference.
Correct.
Some people are intimidated by that transition, by that change.
They are.
I just want things to stay the same.
Yeah, they're nervous.
As soon as the parts start to move, they feel unsettled.
Whoa, yeah.
Right.
It happens with training too. Another example of this is the training. People start training, they figure out how much they're willing to sacrifice to train. They have jobs, they have wives, and there's times where they'll give all of that up to train 100%, open a school. Sometimes people aren't that about that life, so they'll train a little bit, so it's the same process, same
formula. Absolutely. And I recall one of the things, the things that I was known for in signing people up for the school.
Yeah.
Is when I had a guy that said I had to call my wife.
Yeah.
I got to call my wife, or even worse, he'd say, I got to call the boss.
Got to call the boss. Yeah.
And I'd stop him for a moment. And I go, does she call you when she's getting her nails done to ask permission? Or better yet, is there anything else you need to call her for? so she can give you permission to be a man.
Yeah.
What else that allows you to be a man that you must first get your woman's permission to do?
Yeah.
You know, it's if somebody slaps you in your face, do you have to call her before you slap them back?
Yeah, pretty much.
And the whole thing is, you know, I always talk about in this situation, you're a man who had a feeling. You heard a calling.
Yeah.
You're the one that showed up here.
Yep, you made it.
Because
showed up.
you knew what we were about. And whatever happened in your life, right up until you walked into this door, you could not find it and you thought it would be in this building.
Yeah, and then you found it.
And now you're nervous.
Yeah.
And now a transition's coming.
Yep.
Now the change is actually going to occur. The parts are going to start moving.
Yep.
You're anticipating awkward conversations, conflict in schedule, changing in budgeting.
Yep.
You're anticipating all these things, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa,
whoa.
No, pause.
Yeah.
I want everything to stay the same. And what you're looking for is you're looking for your woman, who may be an incredible woman, but does not know what it's like to be a man.
No.
Does not know what it's like to feel what you feel inside right now. You're asking her to take the wheel.
Yeah, like Jesus.
It's too much for me. It's too much for me. I can't. It's all these moving parts, all these things I got to do and change. Many. Just tell me, what should I do?
What should I do?
What should I do?
A lot of times they're hoping for the no.
Well, it makes everything easier.
Okay, it's not my fault.
Makes everything easier.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you had anyone say, "I got to ask Jesus"? I don't think so.
Well, I have probably Puerto Rican women who had asked their husbands.
My favorite, though, I thought you were going to do the line. What do you? I'm not going to ruin it for you, but you do it. You know, what does your name say right there? You got to do that one.
Right. So that was that happened once. It wasn't like a thing,
but it's great.
So I asked him to repeat his name, and I said it doesn't. So it doesn't say Nancy. It doesn't say Nancy. So your name's not Nancy. So why are you acting like a Nancy? Because you're acting like a Nancy. Right? That happened.
That was a good one.
Closed him, by the way.
Of course.
So coffee's for closers.
That's right.
Oh God. But this is the whole thing. You know, when it comes to sacrifice, like I know about sacrifice.
Yeah.
I sacrifice, like I lose money because I do this podcast. I wish you guys understood that. Some of you do, you know, especially the guys that know me, that we have these talks. Like I remember one lady, she the women's fitness program we have here, Fitarella.
Yeah.
A lady quit. And one of the guys told me, MC, she quit because she said you're a racist. Are you fucking serious?
It was a white woman.
It's like, are you serious?
That's hysterical.
No, but
yeah, I mean, of course, you know,
so I understand it, and I understand what my limits are. I understand, you know, the game I have to play, but I will say I'm always transitioning.
Of course,
I'm always transitioning to a place that allows me to commit even further.
Yeah,
you know, it's those of you that know me know that I have, you know, a t-shirt company. I have a homeschool book. I have other projects that have nothing to do with the martial arts, that I have as revenue streams. And all of this is on purpose. All of this is because, you know, I know my limits, and I know, listen, I have a wife, I have 4 kids. We have, you know, a lifestyle that requires a certain income, you know, whether I like it or not. And I cannot allow there to be, you know, one thing that happens and all of a sudden, you know, I'm past my limit.
Correct.
Right. So I'm always, you know, discovering my limits, defining my limits, and transitioning to be able to push them back further. Right. There's a time where my wife, where she was asking me, she's like, Justin, you know, like, do you really need to argue with everybody? You know, because she was getting nervous, you know.
Sure.
And these are things that we had to discuss. I had to explain to her. You know, now she is, you know, down for the cause. She understands completely what happens. You know, doing what I do. She understands this is my nature. This is who I am.
Correct.
Right. And I've done the work necessary to allow myself to be this way. right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so getting back to the conference, when the gentleman I was speaking to was like, listen, not everybody, is his own boss. Not everybody. My first question is, why not? My second question is, well, how long is it going to take them to get there?
Yeah, 100%.
Because if they're down for this, they need to be here.
Correct.
And that needs to be the message that they're getting.
Yeah.
But I'm the pressure of the project. I'm the guy that's in everybody's face. I
Power,
say it the way it's supposed to be
Always.
said, as quickly as possible. Right?
Yes.
As
Kill,
directly as
slay
possible.
all elephants.
There are no elephants in the room when I'm around.
No. I mean, I'd like for the thing, design your transitions. Back in my old job, they were like, your wrestling is getting in the way. We need more of you. We need you to be here more. And I was like, no. It was like, I'm going to transition and change everything. I'm going to train for 100% for a living, get rid of that job.
But you were never unemployed.
No, I was never unemployed.
And that's the thing. You understood your limits.
Yeah, of course.
Right? You couldn't just quit. You couldn't just be irresponsible, because now you're not fulfilling your obligations.
Of course not. No.
Especially when you start, when you're married and you have children, and there are mouths that are fed based on your efforts. You're going to have limits, whether you like it or not. And especially if you're gonna live the lifestyle like I do, where I'm the button pusher.
Well, my favorite part of that was that last week of work where you're on the phone with me. You're like, yeah, so what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just doing some graphics. She's like, yeah, we're painting a wall in the school. I'm like, all right, I'm leaving now. It was like maybe 2 weeks, maybe a week.
It's like, yeah, we're all here working on the building that's going to help pay for your future.
Yeah, it's like I was like, cool. I'm going to finish this graphic. Right. I'll be there soon. Right. But that's the thing. It has to be done. Right. It's best decision I ever made.
Right. Absolutely. So, number 1, discover your limits. Number 2, design transitions. Number 3, commit to your limits. Right. You've done all this work. Do it now.
Yep.
And number 4, which I think goes hand in hand with having done number 3, repeat the process.
Correct.
Now we go back all over again. So for you, you were in a terrible graphics job. Not bad money.
No.
But you couldn't be who you were.
It was a conflict as far as the work I was doing wasn't my own. I wasn't really that committed to it.
Right. And the I would say, more generally speaking, who you were and who you were aspiring to be was not to be found on the path you were on.
No, not at all.
So you discovered what your limits were in terms of, I need to be something that this is not allowing me to be. But then you designed your transitions.
Yeah.
You designed a way to open a school with me, another location with me, and do what was necessary to allow your obligations to be met in a way that was congruent to your identity.
100%.
Number 3, you committed.
Yeah.
After you designed it, you pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And you went all in.
All in.
Burn your boats.
Burn the boats. Yeah.
And then finally, when I say repeat, it's something that we do over and over again.
Over and over again, of course.
Because how many other things are we involved with?
Tons.
With our endeavors around the country.
Yeah.
With our podcast.
100%.
T-shirts and this, that, and the other thing. It's something that we're all constantly doing.
We're never comfortable. We're never just hanging out.
Right.
Always pushing for more.
And the thing is, this is another thing, and this isn't so much about the conference as it is dealing with people that I run into doing the work that I do, or spreading the message that I spread. You get people who are fans of this type of philosophy, fans of this lifestyle, fans of, acting manly and talking about tribe and warrior ethos and all these different things. But then when you look at them and you look at their lives, they're cunts.
Yeah.
If you're a cunt that believes in what I'm saying, you are just as useless to me as somebody who disagrees with me.
Sometimes less. Sometimes the disagreement people, we get some good fodder out of those people.
Because it's pressure to power.
Exactly.
They at least create the conflict to help you empower your own position.
So,
but these people who just, want to wear the T-shirt, they want to put their fist up in the air But when it actually comes to embody the identity that they're proclaiming some affinity for, they're not interested.
Yeah, like whoa.
They
Relax.
see actually being what they're saying they are as being beyond their limits.
Yeah.
It exceeds their limits to do what they say they are.
Yeah, the invaders are at the gates. We're like, all right, guys, let's go. And they're like, yo.
They're like, whoa. Violence?
The what?
I could die.
It's like, I'm
It's
not.
like you're going to die regardless.
I just like talking. I don't.
Yeah. So it's frustrating at times, admittedly, when I see people who are about it. We get this from time to time on the podcast, on social media and such. You get the guys that are, all about it, and they're sharing some rugged content, on their pages and through their identity, through social media. But then you look at their lives, and it's like their lives are completely incongruent with what they're proclaiming to be. And I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about muscles. I'm not talking about fighting experts. I'm just talking about, you look at who they are. You look at, the guy who is saying, I believe in masculinity. I believe that a man should be able to defend his family. I believe this, that, the other thing. And then there's pictures with him and his friends drunk, smoking weed, and, or, he's complaining about his job like a little bitch.
Yeah.
And it's completely incongruent.
It is. 100%.
If you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. Because, by the way, being about it is the only thing that matters to people that are about it.
That's 100% true.
I don't like what you say. If you're saying things in support of what I'm doing, there's certainly value in that. And I'm certainly grateful, for that value. Don't misunderstand that. But for your benefit, if you are not following what you're proclaiming to be, ideal, virtuous, then understand your limit to somebody like me in value is reduced and relegated to a like on a Facebook post.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend time with you if you're not somebody who is actually trying to do the deeds, right? If you just want to talk about it, what that tells me is there is no sacrifice.
Correct.
In your identity.
No.
You're not willing to allow anything to die, even if there is an advantage, in that transition.
Yeah, correct.
And die, I mean figuratively.
Sure.
It's like, are you willing to get rid of the girlfriend, who is a complete fucking loser? Or the person who is completely incongruent with who you're saying you are, right? You're divorced, right?
I am.
Just checking. So some people are more committed to transition than others.
Yeah.
And being congruent with your communication to people and who you are identity-wise is a staple in the personality and the identity of somebody who's legitimate, who has integrity, sacrifice is a huge component of that, because we have to understand too, if we're growing, right, if we're transitioning to stronger versions of ourselves, right, it only makes sense that there are going to be things that are anchored to our lives presently that eventually will be weighing us down.
Yeah.
That need to be cut.
Correct. And
cutting those things off frees us to move and transcend our current status.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. Yeah.
So I don't know.
It all makes sense.
But I digest.
Yeah. So, I don't wear the same clothes I wore when I was 5 years old.
Right. Exactly.
I don't. That wouldn't work.
So sacrifice, you guys have a protocol now.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty straightforward.
The guy that tells me, I hate my job, it's like, all right, why don't you quit? Well, I can't quit. Okay. It sounds like you should be grateful for the job, but when are you gonna leave?
Yeah.
What's your plan? What's your exit strategy? Oh, well, I haven't really thought. So you just want to sit here and fucking complain
Yeah.
You just want to sit here and complain.
Yep.
So what you're doing right now is going to do nothing because next week you're going to be doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
That is your plan.
That's your plan.
Your plan is to complain.
You want me to make you feel better.
Right. You're looking for a weekly catharsis to maintain the status quo. I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy.
No.
If you can't quit, tell me what the plan is to be able to quit. Because if you don't have a plan, you're not a man.
No.
Bam. Don't have a plan, you are not a man. So
sounds like a t-shirt.
Talking
It's like Fight Club. Puts a gun to his head. It's like, if you're not on your way to being a veterinarian in 2 weeks, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to kill you. It's like, what did you want to do when I want to be a vet? Okay, 2 weeks or you're dead. Right. It's like, motivation. I think I'll become a vet. But yeah.
Some people get it.
Yeah.
Some people just get it. So let's move on. Pressure player.
The pressure player.
Pressure player, Richard Spencer. So Richard Spencer, who I had the pleasure of meeting at the conference, is actually the conference's organizer. He was the host.
Yeah.
It was his party.
And future guest on the podcast.
Future guest. I let him know that when I met him. He said, I haven't heard of your podcast. I said, don't worry, you'll be on it. He laughed, but you will be on it.
Yep.
So
it will happen.
But certainly a smart man. His talk during the conference was a very good one.
Awesome.
Just a sharp dude. And one of the things, like I remember at the end of the night when everybody was leaving and the protesters were there, he's in the front. He's in the front. He's the point man. He's the one talking to the cops. He's the one getting his picture taken. He's the one who's being called Hitler and all these things. And he was about it. And, being in a position that he's in, which is different from the position I'm in, because I guess with my podcast and with all the vast content that I addressed, so much of what we do here is centered around masculinity. It's centered around, not being intimidated to be who you are. For a guy like Richard Spencer, he's in a much more political role. He's going to piss off a lot of people with a lot of hinges that swing bigger doors.
True.
Being who he is. But there he is. Front and center, doing what he has to do. And to see, some of the dealings of him with the protesters and all of the obstacles that I could only imagine that he had to deal with.
Even just renting the venue and
all
of that,
having it pronounced or written on all these different websites that, his event is going to be a white supremacist neo-Nazi event. And,
correct.
It's gotta be a fucking pain in the ass. But at a minimum, you talk about somebody who's willing to sacrifice
100%
for his mission.
He puts it out there.
There you go. Right.
Yep.
So kudos to you, Rich.
Awesome.
Unicorn.
Yeah.
Unicorn. These Antifa cunts.
Who is that? She sounds black.
Her father was German.
Oh yeah. Antifa.
You're so crazy.
Antifa, you crazy.
Antifa cunts.
Yeah, Antifa cunts.
Is not the name of a black woman with a German father.
No.
It's actually the anti-fascist cunts.
It sounds so good, though.
It does. So these are the protesters.
Yeah, they were.
These are the protesters I spoke to in the morning.
They upgraded their sign at night, I noticed.
They did. They went big. That was the evening sign. Right?
Yeah, the shoe polish, terrible spelling was earlier.
But it was almost comical. It was comical.
It was hysterical.
I was laughing hysterically dealing with these people. Because the whole thing is, these aren't people that are really sacrificing, right? Because I'm sorry, if you're somebody who believes in the things they say they believe in, your interpretation of that, in terms of deeds, was completely incongruent.
Yeah.
I was discussing with them their positions in the morning before I went into the conference. We had a little interaction that you guys saw in the video at the end of the day. But ultimately, these people don't know about sacrifice.
Not at all.
You know how easy it is to stand on a protesting line, protected by the police, calling people neo-Nazis, shooting silly string.
Sure.
I don't know when I mentioned it, maybe on a live broadcast on Facebook or something. But it's like, just think about it. just think if, you have somebody like me,
Yeah.
right, who is trained in violence,
Correct.
who is very capable, in a situation where I feel physically threatened by these people.
Sure.
And there are no police officers there.
Yes.
And their actions, they know, are going to garner consequences. Think about what threat they're operating under. I tell you right now, I would respect them a hell of a lot more.
True. Yeah.
But what these people are doing,
Because they'd be willing to sacrifice.
because it would be on the table
Be a
now.
big sacrifice.
I saw some
Yeah.
people from the conference getting shot with silly string,
Yeah, you told me.
and they're better people than me, I guess, because they're taking it off and they're going back in. Like, I would fucking lose my mind if somebody, like,
Yeah.
you're gonna touch me? Like, you are going to enter my private space?
Yeah.
Like, no,
It's not happening.
that's not what happens,
Yeah.
and it would have been a problem,
Yep. Hope
but-
you didn't have a big breakfast. Just save room for my fist because the rabbit that you throw to break your goddamn spine.
Yes, it's exactly what I would
that's
have
exactly
done.
right.
Cool off, let off some steam. So
Yeah.
the whole thing is, these people are acting a certain way, but they're not acting in an environment that is actually requiring sacrifice in order for them to do so.
True. You think they were like, silly string,
Let that motherfucker
let's
go.
go.
in. Well, I tell you, in the morning
Yeah.
they stopped talking to me.
Yeah, you did. Because
They literally stopped talking to me, turned around, and
Yep.
started harassing other people.
they're like, this guy knows what he's talking. Forget it. We can't use emotion on him.
He's not losing his mind.
Yeah.
He's not intimidated. He's not, he says last name's Garcia. He's from New York.
Yeah.
Our powers don't work on him.
But you're right, though. You would respect them more if there was that consequence.
Right.
Like
Because
they're
they'd be sacrificing.
There would be. They would pay a price.
Right. Right.
They're not willing to pay that price.
I guess another observation is, there's something to be said for admiring or respecting a formidable opponent.
Yeah. True.
If you're the other side of this battlefield, there's no glory in fucking annihilating you.
There isn't.
There's no glory. And these people are so just unimpressive.
Very unimpressive. Clever, I would say at one point, that one guy, what he said to you, my favorite line of all time.
Oh, when he said, look at you. Look, he goes, look at you. You can't wait to kill a black guy.
That's the best. Like, that's
I
hysterical.
almost pissed myself.
Like, I would never write that. Like, as a joke. That's funny. Like, that guy should get a comedy
man.
show. You can't wait to kill a black man.
They were telling guys, look at you. Look at you. Would you cut your head to look like Hitler? Would you look at Hitler's high school pictures and bring it to your barber? They said to one guy.
That's funny.
Oh, it's like, oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
So sacrifice? No, there's no sacrifice.
None.
There's no threat of any consequence that they were forced to deal with. They didn't have to find their limits.
nope.
But it is what it is. All right.
So, yeah.
So sacrifice, Pat.
Sacrifice.
Break it down.
So sacrifice is extremely important. It's something that if you're not willing to do it, then you're stuck where you're going to be. If you're always looking to grow, looking to climb the ladder of strength, sacrifice is going to be an integral part of that. But it can't just be, I'm going to sacrifice randomly with no sense of what's going on, because that's just stupid. You need to figure out, like it says, figure out what you want to sacrifice, what you're willing to give up to gain something else. Once you figure that out, do it immediately, and then repeat that formula over and over again until you're where you want to be. But at the same time, never be comfortable. Always be climbing the ladder of strength. Agreed.
The saying is pressure to power. What is dealing with pressure if not sacrifice? Without sacrifice, there is no pressure because you are in a comfortable place. You do not have to adapt. You do not have to overcome. You do not have to mount any sort of resilience against adversity, all of which are the only things that will allow you to grow as an individual, to grow in power, to grow in strength, to climb your individual ladder. Sacrifice is something that needs to not only be understood, but it needs to be mastered. At the highest levels of society, whether it be the CEO of a corporation, knowing who he has to lay off and who he can't lay off, and understanding the necessity in having a tough conversation, to the military commander who knows he's sending a unit to their demise, but knows that they're going to be saving countless more lives in the process. Sacrifice is something that is inherent in the climb for power. We cannot grow without it, and it's something that if you have never introduced yourself to, do it first before it introduces itself to you against your will. Thank you, folks, for listening. Awesome episode.
Yeah.
As usual, great
As
talk.
Always.
As always.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, those of you that thought I got rid of the cracker, no, that's not the case. You guys got to understand, we're putting so much content out. Like it's, we're making sure the ship stays afloat. If Pat's going to better serve our episodes just doing the post-production, then that's what it's going to be. As we grow in I guess the world of the Pressure Project.
Yeah.
Different things are going to have to be sacrificed, right? And sometimes
For the greater good.
For the greater good.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes Pat's not going to be here for the episodes, but it certainly, doesn't mean that he's not the part of the Pressure Project. One of the things we're going to do, and I guess we'll send an email out to the list.
Sure.
You guys now, in case you're not on the list on the site itself, please do that. Put your email so you're getting all these announcements. But we're going to be changing our schedule. And it's not going to be the 3 episodes a week. It may be 3 episodes a week, but what we're going to start doing is have a more organic process of production for the episodes, which means we're not going to limit ourselves to having an episode done on a certain day, but rather create a queue of episodes, produce them on a timeline that allows all the other components to function, and then release them accordingly. There may be a week where there's 3 episodes. There may be, a time where 2 weeks pass or 1 episode, but the content will continue to come. As the website grows, and when I tell you, and I know what I'm doing, I know when I put part 2 of episode 200, members only, I know people are going to join. When I know the loyalty matrix decoded can only be seen by members, people are going to join. The same thing with the warrior continuum. But I'm always upfront and honest with that, because the more, talk about sacrifice, the more I'm able to do in terms of generating income through the podcast, the more I could do the podcast, which is the name of the game. And you guys have been great in being supportive of that.
100%.
And I appreciate that completely. But so stay tuned, and the saga continues. Thank you for listening. We look forward to speaking to you on the next episode. And as always, brothers, pressure to power.